The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the party. This is the podcast All You Can Eat show about, deliciousness. And I'm your host, Rob Rosenthal. Happy to be with you, coming to you live from New York. It's the 24th day of April. And speaking about deliciousness, today was one of those days, a delicious day. I hope it was where you are as well, so that you're able to go outside and breathe in fresh air, warm temperatures. Like, it really felt like spring today. At least it did here in New York City. So happy that you've tuned in. Interesting show for you tonight. Tonight's deliciousness is going to be about Mezcal. A lot about Mezcal. In fact, I'm going to dedicate tonight's show and say thanks to the folks over at Gem and Bolt. Gem and Bolt. And that's a brand of Mezcal. We'll be talking not only a little bit about that later. I actually have coming up for you an interview I had and taped here with a woman, Adrin Adrina. Believe it or not, Adrin Adrina, who is the founder of that brand, Gem and Bolt, a very delicious brand of Mezcal. My friends, para todo mal, Mezcal. Y para todo bien, también. That's the Spanish way of saying for everything bad, Mezcal. And for everything good, yeah, also. And if you've been out at all lately in any kind of bar, cocktail, lounge, restaurant, dining establishment, undoubtedly, you've seen that Mezcal is undergoing somewhat of I don't know if you would call it a renaissance. I mean, it's been around for hundreds of years, but it's becoming so popular that, it's gaining kind of ground on tequila in American bars. So, you go into places these days, you look at the cocktail menu, and, there's going to be some Mezcal, some, either straight up, a variety of them, or they're making cocktails these days. You're mixologists are making cocktails these days with Mezcal in lieu of other spirits. Like a Mezcal Mary. Instead of putting vodka in a Bloody Mary. Now, here's the thing about, Mezcal and tequila, because they're related. But while they're both spirits, and they're both made from agave, which grows in the ground, the fact that they're both from agave, that's kind of where the similarities end. Because in a way, technically, all tequila is a type of mezcal, but not all mezcal is a tequila. You with me on this one? Let me give you another piece of this. Think of it like whiskey and bourbon, right? All bourbon is categorized as a whiskey, but not all whiskey is a bourbon. You could have whiskey that could be Scotch, it could be Irish, it could be Japanese, it could be something altogether different. So what I'm saying is, since they both come from the agave root, as does, by the way, your agave syrup. I mean, the agave, that's a pretty incredible plant that grows in the deserts. Anyway, the word mezcal comes from the Aztec word that means oven-cooked agave. And this is where things start to get interesting with this, because unlike tequila, which by law must be made from only one type of agave, your 100% blue Weber agave, right? Mezcal can be made from more than 30 different varieties of agave. Not just the 100% blue agave. And as a consequence, when you have 30 ingredients to work with, you're able to create, obviously, a wider and more diverse kind of a palette, a flavor profile. Further to that, as with tequila, the longer you age it, kind of the more color it takes on from the barrel. So when it comes to both, tequila as well as mezcal, it can come out clear, it can be golden, it can be amber. It all depends on kind of the age. Now I'm gonna hit on the age point in a minute. I'm gonna come back to what the different kind of age classifications are and what you would notice. But before we do, I just want to say that today, mezcal is still made from the heart of the agave plant. It's called the piña. And they've been making it the same way, more or less, for 200, for a couple of hundred years, right? I mean, frankly, a lot of it is still made kind of artisanally versus in some kind of giant factory. And I would opt for that always. The way it was done hundreds of years ago and still being done today. I'm going to tell you something. As a guy that has spent an awful lot of time in South America and in Mexico, I find that the cuisine of Mexico is entirely sophisticated. I think the perception of Mexican food in the United States is different from my perception of Mexican food, having been there 15 or 20 times. I find their cuisine, incredibly sophisticated. Why? Because, first of all, it goes back hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. Now, if you don't think that extra 1,500 or 2,000 years makes a difference, I'm going to have to disagree. They make a mole out of, 40, 50 different ingredients, whether it's seeds or nuts or peppers or, very sophisticated. And this is the country, Mexico, that's responsible for having, found avocados, beans, chilies, corn comes from there, papaya, tomato, and, cacao, chocolate. Thank you to Mexico for that. So when it comes to the making of the mezcal, I'm all in favor of going artisanal, going old world, making it the way they do. I'm going to tell you how they do it, but here's what happens. You go into Mexico. These plants, these agave plants, take an awful long time to grow and mature. But they take the heart of the plant, that piña I told you about, and if you're going to make tequila out of it, which they do, again, using only 100% blue agave tequila, right? What they're doing is they steam that heart in ovens above ground before they then, distill it and liquid in copper pots. Here's the difference. Mezcal, this is what I love. When I first heard this, I was like, whoa, that's sophisticated, man, what they're doing. They've been doing a long time. Mezcal, you're using, as I said, any one of these 30 different types of agave, but it gets it gets a taste. And it gets a taste I'm going to talk to you about, but it's smoking, right? And it gets it because the agave is placed in a pit in the ground, underground, right? So you get the root of this plant. It goes into a pit underground. The pit is filled with hot coals, and it's going to sit there for 2 or 3 days and roast. You get me? They're roasting the agave underground before they start the process of kind of distillation in pots. And so, for those who are uncertain about mezcal, haven't had it, haven't tried it, have a pre-existing point of view about it, the one thing that'll stand out instantly when you get a sip, for the most part, is you're going to get the smokiness. And you're getting that smokiness because they have roasted that plant underground before they did the distillation. And the fact that it's coming from 30 different, 30 different possible types of agave means that you can do some blending, in the same way that they would in wine. Is it a Syrah? Is it a Petite Syrah? Is it a Pinot Noir? What do I have? A blend with a Cabernet? Maybe this has some whatever. So again, we're doing this here with Mezcal and roasting it. And the roasting caramelizes the plant, and it gives it this kind of rich, flavorful, savory, smoky taste. It's the same way that, like, if you took, like, if you roast potatoes versus putting them into, versus boiling them. The potato is good either way. It's just that when you roast it, you're caramelizing it. You're taking the sugars, you're bringing them into play. That makes it, that's what gives taste and flavor and savoriness. Very sophisticated, and I mean rich, intense. It's a big, Mezcal's not a little thing. Mezcal and tequila have changed from, like, back in the day, right? Back in the day, people would do shots of tequila. Fine, if that's what you want to do, but that's like, that's kind of, that's old school, but it's youthful. I'm fine, but we're talking here about these days drinking tequilas that are so good that you would sip them so that you could savor them and appreciate them over time. Back in the day, when it came to Mezcal, a lot of people remember that there was that worm in the bottle, man. And then there was the whole legend about the worm. If you eat it, it's going to make you cry. No, it's not like that anymore. You may find the occasional worm intentionally in a bottle of Mezcal, but that's neither here nor there. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a drink that is sophisticated, that you will drink in the same way that you would a single malt scotch. It's just that, whereas when you're drinking scotch, you get a particular a particular type of profile related to kind of the green fields of Ireland or Scotland. When you're drinking a Mezcal, right, the richness, the intensity, the variety of flavor that comes from it, you have to decide on your own what you taste, because we all have different buds, and what you put in your mouth before you have it makes a difference. And what you put in your mouth right after it makes a difference. And anyway, the point is, super sophisticated sipping drink. 4 different, maybe 5 different kind of classifications or distinctions that are worth knowing about. 1, Blanco or silver, right, is a tequila that's bottled immediately after it's distilled and it's aged for, fewer than 2 months. And so it doesn't really never turns color because it's aged for a short time in, either stainless steel or like a natural oak barrel, so there's not a lot of color. Now we're going to shift, and I want to try to be clear here, but now there's a categorization called Joven Mezcal. Now, Joven is young, right? So Joven Mezcal is also bottled immediately after it's distilled, and it's aged for, 2 months or less. So there's a freshness to it, and there's not a lot of color to it. When we talk about reposado, whether it's tequila or mezcal, reposado simply means rested. So that means that it's in oak for more than 2 months, but, less than a year. All right. So, it takes on a little bit of color from the barreling process. Very pleasant color, and it takes on a little bit more taste in my estimation. I love a reposado. It's got a little bit more of that kind of caramelization, meaning that you can taste, in my case, a little bit more what I would call a caramel or a vanilla taste from it. And then you have, finally, again, whether it's tequila or mezcal, you have añejo, aged. And so now you're looking at something that's been in that barrel between 1 and 3 years. It's in an oak barrel. It's picking up color. It's darker. And that age gives it more, whatever you want to call it, flavor, taste, character. Up to you. Some are better to have before, some are better to have after, some are better to have in a margarita. Hey, if I'm making a margarita, I don't need reposado or añejo. I'm happy with a blanco or a silver. It doesn't need to have spent a lot of time. The more time it spends in those barrels, The richer, the more intense the flavor, great. That I'll sip on. You don't have to adulterate it with lime juice and sugar. Finally, my friends, you have extra añejo, so you know what that means. It's extra age, so it's been in there at least for 3 years in oak barrel. It takes on more color, it takes on more darkness, etc., etc. How do you drink these things? Listen, if you're in Mexico, mezcal is generally consumed straight, or you can sip it alongside a nice slice of orange, or topped with worm salt. I know this is going to sound disgusting, but I probably, if you were tuned in recently, I was in Mexico, a month ago, 5 weeks ago. I was drinking tequila, obviously. One of the guys served it to me with a salt. He said you can have it or don't have it, but it's worm salt, right? So it just looked like colorful salt. It was all ground, but it was kind of like half sea salt, half dried up worm, and then you say to yourself, okay, that's disgusting. I felt like, here's the thing, I was there, this is my attitude, I had it, I tasted it, and you know what it tasted like? It was salty. I can't tell you that I know what a worm tastes like, but I will also tell you, not a lot of stuff I don't eat, but you know what was on my list of not eating? I wasn't big on worms. And I certainly didn't think I was going to be having grasshoppers, but there I was in Mexico, and they, chapulines, they came with the meal, and you look at them, these grasshoppers, and they look like grasshoppers. And they crisp them up a little bit, and I said, all right, what the hell? I popped a couple of grasshoppers in my mouth, fine. I can't tell you that I either liked or didn't like the taste. I was neutral on the taste. I felt like they should be crispier, like a lot of the reason that they're eating them there, snack-wise, is because they're crispy and tasty and flavored with kind of like a chili, whatever. But all of that is an aside to that, a slice of some, I like the mezcal. I'm having some right now, by the way, the Gem and Bolt. I like it straight up. Neat, no nothing, no ice, but I'll tell you what, a slice of orange not going to hurt you. You want to have a little sal de gusano, a little worm salt, go ahead, or don't. And tequila, up to you. I mean, like I said, tequila you have in your margarita. If you have a really good quality tequila, you don't really need to put anything else in it. According to legend, my friends, mezcal was created when a lightning bolt struck an agave plant, cooking and opening it and then releasing the liquid inside. And that's why people often refer to it as the elixir of the gods. Oh, that is such a lovely concept. Mezcal, elixir of the gods. And it's also why my guest tonight named her brand Gem and Bolt. Gem for that piña, the heart of the agave plant. Bolt for the lightning bolt. I liked that before I even tasted the product, I liked very much that Gem and Bolt was founded by an extraordinary female duo. You had Elliot Kuhn and you had Adrina Adrina, who is so you have like people who are artists and alchemists who understand plants and herbology. Very important. I'm not going to spend time on the other subject being the fastest growing thing that I see in the country right now is CBD. In that business, we were on with a guest last week, but the commonality here is that we're talking about things that come out of the ground and have an effect. Sometimes homeopathic, sometimes medical, sometimes medicinal, sometimes soothing, sometimes enlivening, sometimes drunkening, whatever you want, right? Anyway, I was intrigued that Gem and Bolt was founded by women, artists, alchemists, people who understood herbology, channeling their diverse backgrounds. They created a brand founded on the mentality that art and plants and celebration elevate consciousness. I'm feeling like so super conscious right now. So they created Gem and Bolt. And here's another thing you should know, and this was actually exciting to me. Their particular Gem and Bolt is distilled with something called Damiana. Damien, with an A at the end of it. Damiana. A leafy desert shrub from the mint family. And in the realm of plant medicine, Damiana is prescribed as a natural antidepressant, heart opener, mood regulator, kind of sexual energy booster. You'll find Damiana here in your Gem and Bolt Mezcal. You'll also find Damiana, to be honest with you, in, people who are doing infusing CBD. I'm sure you can find one with Damiana in it. I would even maybe check out the brand 1906. I bet you one of their chocolate edibles has Damiana in it. Anyway, I spent time with a woman, Adrin Adrina, and from the very second that I met her, I really liked her. Why is that? Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes you just connect with people instantly. That was the case with Adrina, and I play for you now my conversation with her about Mezcal and her brand Gin and Bolt. I hope technology works, and bear with me. Here we go. With Adrin Adrina. Yes, now, what I would have already told you by now is that she is in the business of Mezcal. Say hello to everybody, Adrina.
Hello. How's it going?
Very good. Now, first of all, even before we tell people, who you are and where you came from, were you born with the name Adrina?
I was.
You were? Fantastic. And does it have a particular meaning or significance?
It does not, and nobody knows exactly how I got the name, because I was born on a coffee table. And
you were born on a coffee table.
Born on a coffee table.
I thought that I heard that right.
Yeah, just like the book.
And I love that. And you are a book, by the way. You are a book. And what I know about you, aside from the fact that we're going to talk about your Mezcal business, is that you come from, I'm going to say, the mountains of Virginia.
Deep mountains.
Deep. And tell people about your kind of growing up experience. I like to start from the very beginning.
Oh, I love it.
I like to start because I want to give people total context. Tell people where you grew up and what that was like.
Well, I grew up in Rappahannock, Virginia. It's a county deep in the mountains of Virginia, Western Virginia. And my co-founding partner, Ellie, a woman, Elliot Kuhn, she also grew up there. I've known her since she was born. So that's our story starts there.
And what's it like growing up in that part of the world?
Well, it was a very bohemian upbringing. Right. So we lived in a community of people who were, let's just say, outlaws and revelers.
I see what you are saying. Did I see somewhere that there might have been a connection into the bootlegging business?
Yes. We'll call it our fathers, actually, were best friends and modern-day bootleggers.
I just wanted you to know that I have done my due diligence. Okay.
You have.
Now, what is the eating and drinking kind of, what's your connection to food or drink from early on? Are there any memories that you have kind of growing up in terms of what you ate or drank that would have influenced your taste, your palate, your profile?
Well, our parents were definitely very much into good food. They all had gardens. They all grew their own vegetables. All very back, quote unquote, back to the landers. And but the most prominent aspect that attaches itself to Gem and Bolt is the fact that we were raised by a lot of herbalists. So we use an herb in here, Damiana. So that was that's the origin of the product and the project and all of it.
I actually love that for a lot of reasons. It's just herbology is kind of, it feels to me, it's it's getting more kind of known and popular and understood. So I'm going to ask you all about that. I did neglect to tell the people, although I will have told them before you and I got together,
yes,
that your product here is a Mezcal called Gem and Bolt, and it is infused with Damianas. But even before we
distilled.
I should not say infused, because it's literally an ingredient, meaning it's part of the distillation process. So So before we even get into this, because I work in some type of chronological sequence.
Okay.
Here's my question for you. You're a creative person. You're an artist. So talk about that. What are your influences? What type of art were you doing long before you contemplated getting into the mezcal business?
Well, I was a curator and an artist, and I put together shows that I was also in that were very well-rounded events. So they would have a food aspect, a libation and elixir aspect, and some kind of engaging aspect, music. So the curation was my focus point.
And if I'm not wrong, again, a little homework.
Oh, I love
you
this.
did some of that curation in one of the great food cities in America, New Orleans.
Oh, absolutely.
What did you eat well during? I mean,
you know what? Those years in New Orleans, the love of food there, it really is. It makes me cry and laugh all at the same time.
I like that, and I'll tell you why. The podcast, as you might know, is about deliciousness, and that obviously, first and foremost, applies to food. And you know, the eating in this country, the food in this country, the development of cuisine in this country over the last 10, 15, 20 years is dynamic and explosive and fantastic. But New Orleans has a long head start. And I'm with you. I mean, just like thinking about going there, all I can think of is what I'm going to be eating.
I know.
Do you have some favorites from there? Because I can tell you mine, but I don't.
I mean, I love crawdaddies more than most things. That's really the deal for me.
Crawdaddies are what?
Crayfish.
Crayfish,
yeah.
And both basically, and you suck out the, you take
break
out
them
the meat,
open, suck out the head.
And they're generally like made in some giant cauldron of stuff that is all
bunch
spicy.
of spicy stuff in there.
I am a fanatic for, I'm going to say, fried oysters or fried shrimp or boys.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm with you.
That makes me happy.
No, I'm with you.
That makes me happy. And even sitting down in New Orleans, by the way, I'm happy if they're just going to be serving you one oyster after another.
Well, you're hitting all of my points. That make me really happy.
Good.
I'm not so, those are the things that I love the most. Right. All three of those things.
Right.
Po' boy, with either shrimp or oysters, actually.
I agree.
But the oysters are great. And when I was a child, I lived down in Louisiana. A group of those bohemians went down to Louisiana for a couple years all together, commune style. And so my first memories were down there. And I didn't like oysters. It breaks my heart that I missed out on so many.
There are certain things, and oysters is primary among them. That require a development and maturity.
Yeah.
I get that. So anyway, so you're curating art, and I feel also, Adrina, that you have traveled extensively around the world.
I've lived extensively around the world as well. Yeah.
So of the places, talk about a few of the places that you've lived and what are kind of some of the highlights in general.
In general, I love London. I didn't know I would love London until I lived there, but I became a deep lover of London. It's a spectacular place.
Yes.
I lived in Kerala. Speaking of food and interesting place, I lived in southern India for a year in Kerala, and that is an incredible place. And fish curry.
Fish curry in India. England, good. And by the way, I know that you're in New York right now, but you're just visiting. Where do you spend your time now?
If I'm completely honest, I'm on the road most of the time these days. Like for the last couple years, as we launched in the States, and I'm just basically on the road. But I have a base in Europe now. I left Mexico about a year and a half ago. I was based in Oaxaca.
In Oaxaca, right.
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of food, in as much as I like the food all over
I was
Mexico,
getting there. I was
just going to say, I mean, as much as I like the food all over Mexico, Oaxaca is pretty famous. In some ways, I think of it as, and I may be wrong about that, I think it's kind of like the New Orleans of Mexico. It
is. No, Oaxaca, in my humble opinion, has the best food in the Americas. Like, it's spectacular, and there's so much more than just the classics that we all know. Like, you get into the villages, and there's, agave is used as, have you eaten agave, roasted agave? This is one of my favorite things on the planet as well.
I have to make a point. I literally, I did a show, I want to say last week, because I was in Mexico about a week and a half ago.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
And also a spectacular part of the state of Nayarit. It runs up and down the Pacific coastline for up to 10 miles, and it's an agricultural area. So on the one hand, you have fish and seafood. On the other hand, you have all the fruits and vegetables. From an eating perspective, it's genius. That said, I don't feel that I have had roasted agave, and I'm going to.
You know, another thing that's super obscure
ahead.
that I want you to try, and it's hard to find, but some of the chefs, ask the chefs, they'll be like, I have a few sheets of it. I'm forgetting the real name of it, but it's basically parchment paper made from agave, and it is, when you cook, it is unreal, and it's like a dying art. Whoever was making it, however it's being made, it's very difficult to find, but that's a must.
Let's use that as a segue. Did you? I don't know if you answered the question.
Oh, maybe I didn't.
In terms of where you trying to avoid that.
No.
Where did you live?
Oh, so I have a base. My only base is in Athens, Greece. So
no kidding.
No kidding.
All right, look. We'll talk about this afterwards.
Okay.
But I'll be over in Athens in June, so just as an FYI.
Talk about food, also.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Oh, and I know. Well, I'll share all my
I'm
favorites. Yeah.
This is very exciting for me. All right, so what I think we could segue into at this point is something. I don't know what you were doing aside from artisting and curating, but something along the way inspired you to get into the business of producing and marketing mezcal.
Yeah, that's a story. So Ellie and I were actually making most of our artwork together. We're doing our shows together at this point. And I lived in Marfa, Texas. So I'd left London, I'd left New York, and I'd moved to Marfa. You know of Marfa, it's an art town. Donald Judd.
Marfa is M-A-R-F-A, right?
Yeah.
It is an art. I haven't been. But apparently not only an art town, but a good place you can get some food, no?
Yeah, I moved there with my ex, who's a chef, and started a great restaurant there.
Wow.
Amazing place. So, yeah, Rocky Barnett, incredible chef.
What kind of food are we talking about?
You know, well, there's all kinds of things that are going on, but he's been specializing in pre-Hispanic food. And nobody's really doing that, so it's like very interesting. Juicy.
So anyway, how did the mezcal come to be?
So we had decided to leave the States, number one, and also leave the world of art to start a project / business that was focused on art and plant medicine and celebration. So I knew that one of my skill sets was to bring in plant medicine through the celebration door, because I'd been doing it, by curating these shows, these art shows with libations and elixirs. I knew that I could combine it, and so we didn't know how it was going to work out, and we never knew that we would have a mezcal brand. But in the very beginning of this process, we were making a Damiana elixir with a mezcal base, because mezcal is the cleanest spirit out there, high alcohol.
Okay, let's just stop for a second. First of all, I happen to be a fan. Not only, I'm a fan of mezcal, because when I first started to learn about it, it was from somebody like you, in the sense that he was a master of chemistry and biology who figured out how to produce mezcal. And I heard about the production method, and I thought to myself, this is as sophisticated a spirit as anything that I've ever encountered in my life. Way more complicated. If not complicated, may not be the right word. Way more sophisticated.
Sophisticated is a good word.
Than your average kind of, let me just go distill some corn or grain or whatever. So I think what I want to say to you is that I've always been like, people, I don't think, understand a lot of stuff. They don't understand that Mexican cuisine goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and that makes a difference. And listen now, same thing holds true with mezcal. I feel like I know something happened in the 80s, but I feel like the method for figuring out how to actually convert agave into a spirit probably is like 800, like it goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
If not longer. There are discussions whether it was before the Spaniards came along or not. There's a big discussion about this in the world, but it's a very old process. And, mezcal was all agave spirit. Even tequila used to be, everything was mezcal before.
I think tequila is considered. Well, tell people, because this is important. Now, let's get into the educational aspect of it.
Sure.
We're going to get to Damiana in a second, because I'm fascinated by that. But explain to people the fundamental difference between a mezcal and a tequila, in that they both come from the same root. Or
different plants. So, same.
Agave.
So tequila comes from blue agave and is only produced in Jalisco. And under its denomination of origin. It can be 50% agave, and then it can also be 50% fillers, which is why...
Let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
The point is that generally good tequila...
Good tequila is usually 100% agave.
Agave.
Exactly.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's like one type of agave. It's like
blue,
right?
Blue agave.
Now, Mezcal, in contrast.
So Mezcal comes from a variety of different agaves, and it can be produced in 8 different states. The one that people know the best is Oaxaca, because it's known for its very high quality Mezcal. But Guero, there's beautiful Mezcals from all of these other states as well. And yeah, there's a variety of agaves that you can have it from. And one of the most important scenarios now, this changed in the last couple of years, is we now have 3 different categories. There's industrial, which there are very few of and nobody wants, of course. Then there's artisanal, which we're artisanal, and that's, the old ways but not in clay pots. And then there's ancestral, which is made in clay pots. So,
all right. So what was it that kind of turned you on to like a project that meant that you went into business to actually produce a product? Like what was the thing about Mezcal?
Well, first of all, it was a very organic process, like as organic as it comes. We were making an elixir with Mezcal, with Damiana, and we had speakeasies, and we were serving this Mezcal elixir in a Mezcal cocktail, and that was all we were serving at our speakeasy. We had one in Oakland, and then we just moved to Oaxaca, and we had one in Oaxaca.
What I'm laughing at is that there's not a business you haven't been in.
Well, the speakeasy, it was also a place to have art events, and it was a creative venue. It wasn't just a drinking venue. They were music, art. So from the very beginning, our friends in Oaxaca who are Mezcal producers were saying, you're going to have a brand, you're going to have
What do you call Mezcal producer? The Mezcaleros?
Well, that's the man that actually physically makes the Mezcal.
Right.
Mezcal owner, Mezcal brand owner.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's about that
simple.
People
like the
Mezcalero. Great word, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Right, so anyway, you speak easy, and there's Mezcal involved.
And all of our friends who were in the Mezcal business had brands that were like, you're going to have a brand. It just makes sense.
Right.
And we were always like, no. We're not like going down that route. We're just doing this other thing. Not for fun. No, we were throwing full on. We were doing we had full on scenarios going on. But as soon as we learned, and somehow we didn't know this, somehow it missed our minds. Somebody told us, well, why did you name yourself as Gem and Bolt then? We were like, we don't know what you're talking about. And he said, well, the mythology of Mezcal is that the lightning bolt came from the sky and hit the gem of the plant and created the sap known as Mezcal. So then we were like, okay, we'll do this brand. So that's how it started.
That's unbelievable. But
it was crazy.
But it's also, by the way, incredibly ambitious to think that you can go from... having been kind of in that business, to think that you can go from kind of like, using it as kind of a party favor, if you will, or an ingredient to a party, to going, we're going to go full on. We're going to actually create a company and a brand and a product and sell this thing. I mean, that's...
Again, it was organic. We had started doing the speakeasies. Then we were driving thousands of liters, like 1,000 liters at a time, hand infused with Damiana to Tulum, and we were throwing parties there. And then we were invited to go to a project in Mykonos. We had a bunch of followers, and we got legal, and then we got serious.
Okay, I love so much about this, but here's the thing. I don't feel somehow that I would have been invited to any of these parties.
Of course you would.
I don't know. Who's showing up at these, like, how this is off track here.
Okay.
But I'm fascinated by it. Who is showing up at these affairs that you're throwing?
There's a large group of humans who are kind of jumping around the planet.
From one place to another?
Not all the time, not full time, but going from, that are very much into, let's say, deep house music.
Right.
A lot of humans going from one gathering to the next, and it's a network of people, but it's thousands of people, so...
Okay, and so there you are, like if you had I don't mean to be pedestrian about it, but I mean if you had like a list...
Yeah.
You would be able to, like, there's a way that you can reach all these people and say, hey, my partner and I.
Organic as well. Things are the way that things are functioning these days, the networks that I know, the understanding of how the connectivity kind of reaches across the planet now, it's wild.
Okay, right before we talked Damiana, do you want to? Mezcal has become. It has gone from where you first in this country, you first recognized it as something that was associated with the with the worm, right? Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, mezcal in like major metropolitan kind of funky cities around the country has become almost kind of like the ingredient of choice in cocktails. Like it's hot in a way, right? Okay. Tell the people kind of who haven't had, and they're all smoky by virtue of kind of the process. Mm-hmm. But can you tell people about the taste, a little bit about the taste profile of mezcal, like sure. Why, like what is it about mezcal that makes it worth kind of the try for those who haven't had it?
Well, there's a real earthiness to it. I mean, and here's the thing: the truth about mezcal, they're all very different. Sure. You know, the profile is very different between all of them. Right. So.
But you're using a particular type of agave.
Well, it's more the combination of the Damiana with this. Okay. So it's Espadín that we use, which is a very standard. We'll call it a standard.
Sure.
You know, it's the most normal of the norm of the agaves. But the Damiana and the way that it merges with it is quite elegant. So.
Okay, it's time. The reason that it's smoky is because one of the first steps in the process when you have your mature kind of agave is to heat it.
You roast it in pits.
You roast it underground in pits. Great, love that. Okay, so by definition, I mean you're always going to have generally a smokiness, which for people that are drinking all of their kind of like single malt or whatever,
exactly.
People who like smoky have no excuse not to be sipping some mezcal.
Absolutely.
Okay, now it's important that we tell people what you've done here, because one of the things that distinguishes your product, and then I think we should sip some more of it.
Yes, let's do that.
But one of the things, just loving that. But one of the things that distinguishes your product is that you have distilled it with Damiana. Mm-hmm. What is a Damiana?
So Damiana is it's a bush.
Okay.
We call it a flowering bush. It has a yellow flower on it. We use the leaves, and it's known throughout the southern United States where it's dry, and all of Mexico. And it has a.
Is it more? So is it more of like it's the desert? It's the dry conditions that allow it to grow.
Desert shrub, basically.
Okay,
yeah.
Fine.
And it is known as an aphrodisiac in Mexico,
right.
But. The quality of it is it's a mood elevator. We call it a feel-good herb.
Okay.
And that's why I wanted to use it, because I wanted something that was elevating and like opened people up, make it easier to celebrate.
Enough on its own.
Together they're rock stars.
God, I love this. This is what we call synergy.
Yes.
Okay. So
they love each other. Agave and Damiana love each other.
Okay, so other than being sexual stimulant is like really all you need to do. But what I'm saying, other than that, are there other properties that are associated with Damiana?
It's a mood regulator.
It's a mood regulator.
Yeah,
okay,
which is also really good.
In general, it's all good. And you know more about this than the average person because you come from a background of herbology.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So then you guys go, not only are you going to make it in mezcal, we're gonna distill it with Damiana, and I'm gonna guess that there's no other brand, right? Because and we're talking, ladies and gentlemen, about Gem and Bolt, and Adrina and I at this moment are sipping on some Gem and Bolt happily right now. When you describe kind of the product or the effect of the product, what would what should people know about this stuff?
Well, it's very smooth is one thing, and the interesting, a lot of mezcals when they're taking the approach to make it more palate pleasing for people, they'll lower the alcohol, so they'll add some water, right? This is actually quite high in alcohol, and it's a 44.
Right.
So
what's the standard? Like, what's the norm? I'm asking.
44 if you're a mezcal connoisseur, if you're under like 43,
you're not paying attention.
No, I mean you don't want to be a 40 or 41. And I'm not dissing that. Like there are mezcals that I like that are 40 or 41.
Right. So what's our number here?
44.
Meaning that we're
88 proof.
88 proof. Okay, and then on top of that, so you can talk about the smoothness of it, and also then we can talk a little bit about the total impact between the mezcal and the Damiana.
Well, that's where the elegance and the smooth. It was an accident, obviously.
Okay. Wow.
we were infusing, and we loved the flavor profile. So when we finally started distilling and going legal, because it's not. You don't have a set product when you're infusing. So we started experimenting with the distillation process and finding a way so that it had the same taste profile, basically. And it's all about how the essential oils of the agave and Damiana merge, right? And so we basically do it like you do a gin. And the magic thing that happened in that is that the Damiana, it seems to coat the harshness of the Mezcal.
Wow.
You still have the flavor, you still have a little light smoky, you still get it all, but it's like it's been just softened. And that was total accident.
It's a really super happy accident.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just gonna, because we're
Okay,
here, we might
yeah.
as well. Let's just
Cheers.
Yeah, how's yours been?
Muy bien, muy
Okay,
bien.
well, okay. And so we are going to now have another. It's not that I haven't had a sip or two, but I'm ready for like the official sip of Gem and Bolt. You know, I'm going to be honest. I'm happy with it, and I'm happy with it for exactly the reason that you described. In as much as I like mezcal in general, and I'm not a Scotch drinker, by the way. I'm totally not.
Me either, by the way.
I'm totally not a Scotch drinker, and I get why they may love it. But like, I think I like mezcal for two reasons. One is because I'm blown away by the sophistication of a method that probably goes back 1,000 years, and secondly, because there's so much that happens in a mezcal on your palate. I was fortunate last week, Adrina, to go to a class that was taught by someone who's an expert in both tequila and mezcal.
Amazing.
Well, what was amazing about it was that he put out all types of. I mean, I had a worm salt.
Mm-hmm, it's delicious, isn't it?
I had no problem with the worm salt.
Oh no, it's delicious.
It was all good. But the point is that one of the things that you have to notice when you drink mezcal, and you'll notice it with your nose first, and then ultimately with the different parts of your tongue, is there's a lot of taste going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many different there's so many different pieces, characteristics of the taste of it. What you've done here that I find interesting, and this is no bullshit because I just don't have time for it, is I sense, I don't know what Damiana is, I don't know what it smells like, or looks like, or should taste like, but what I did notice in your mezcal is exactly what you offered up, which is like the edges off. Meaning that oftentimes when you have that first sip of mezcal, you will get, in addition to the smokiness, that slight burn on the backside. And here, what you've created is actually much smoother than that.
Yeah, and it was an accident. That aspect was a very happy.
Some of the greatest
accident.
things in life are happy accidents, aren't they?
They are.
So you've named it Gem and Bolt. You've produced it. It's distinctive in that it has the Damiana as part of the process. You have it at a high proof, which is great, and I really like it a lot and would recommend it heartily to people. So, is it available kind of to, and hit the thing, the podcast will run, is available because of the beauty of the internet everywhere in the world. So what's the way that people kind of find out where to find it if they want to get their hands on it?
Super easy. They just go onto the website, which is gemandbolt.com.
And is that
to the Buy Me section? There's a little area.
Is it Gem and ampersand Bolt?
No, it's A&D. Spelled out.
Okay, so Gem, as you people would know, GEM and AND BOLT. And you're going to, how much, what's the price point if, let's use United States American dollars. What's the price point for a bottle? What is this, like
it's around $50.
Is it a liter?
750 mil.
750.
In Europe, we're 700 mil. And we're 50 pounds, 55 euro.
I love it a lot. Now, when so here are the two things that first come to mind. I like it like you and I are having it, which is to say,
Me too.
Neat, straight up in the glass, no nonsense, no ice, no lime, no salt, no nothing. But you could easily, and the American palate kind of appreciates this, you could easily convert this into some type of cocktail thing. What do you like?
I'll tell you a few ways that I like it. At home, I drink it neat. When I go out for dinner, for example, it's great with oysters and sushi and Indian food and Thai food. It's actually good with a lot of different things, even steak, honestly.
I wanted to stop, and I want to, because this is really brutally important for me.
Okay.
I want you people to understand from a woman, an artist, who has created a delicious brand of mezcal, that when asked what is the best thing to mix it with, said things like sushi, and Indian food and steak, and there might have been one other.
Oysters.
And oysters.
It's incredible with oysters.
To say nothing of Mexican food in general.
Well,
right?
obviously
Saying,
Mexican,
right?
yeah.
So God bless. Okay, where were we?
Okay, so I would drink it. There's a couple different ways. Quite simple. It's always good in a margarita. Like
sure.
always good with grapefruit juice.
Tequila.
Yeah, grapefruit juice, and I like it on the rocks with a twist of grapefruit, a twist of grapefruit peel.
I love that you.
That's really really nice.
Instead of the obvious.
Yeah, it's really really nice.
Good for you.
Yeah,
Love that.
it's also very good with a couple dashes of bitters in there on the ice.
Wow.
We call it Bolton bitters.
Bolt and bitters.
Yeah, it's a favorite when you want to mix it up and keep it simple.
And I will say this just because it popped right into my head, and that may be the influence of the mezcal. But the Fee Brothers, who makes bitters, I have one at home, and it's actually grapefruit bitters.
Oh, I want to try it. I don't know
That's
this
my
one.
point.
Yeah,
That's my point. It's
beautiful.
Like you can literally go Bolton bitters and buy a little bottle of Fee Brothers grapefruit bitters and call it a day.
Or if you ever see a mole bitters, we've done some of that. I forget the brands that do it, unfortunately. It is divine.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the other way that I've tried it, and I don't, is that there's also a product in Mexico called Ancho Reyes.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And the thing about Ancho Reyes is it's one of the most unusual liqueurs.
It is.
And it's unusual because it's made with ancho chili peppers, which I always tell people from a cooking perspective are among my favorite because they bring a smokiness and a fruitiness without bringing too much heat. But what I'm saying to you is that if I were going to make a margarita, I've done this before, so this is not coming from nowhere. I've decided that instead of having a typical margarita, which involves not only the lime juice, but the tequila and the orange liqueur.
There are actually a lot of parts to it.
There's three. Basically, doesn't matter. But seriously, I've actually had a thing where I took mezcal.
Yeah.
And for the sweetness aspect, I give it a little bit of ancho reyes.
Nice.
And then you squeeze. In my case, it would have been lime juice. In your case, it could be grapefruit.
Yeah, I like it with lime as well.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, good to know. I like that.
There's nothing wrong with that. A nice plate of ceviche, or
very good,
or sashimi, or I'm starting now. And really, by the way, I did not have lunch, which means two things. Number one, I'm peckish, and number two, your Gem and Bolt is kicking in.
Yeah, of course.
All right, now that said, I feel like we've covered the important things, but there's also one more thing. Which is what have not we covered? What is the question that I have not asked you? What is the one thing that you want to tell people? And it doesn't have to be a mezcal. It can be about anything in the world. You are a free creative spirit. You've moved and you've traveled and you've lived around the world. You are an artist. You are a promoter of events in among the community of interesting people. And now you literally are a producer. And marketer of Gem and Bolt. How should we tie this all together? What do you want to tell people?
I mean, the most important thing that comes to mind is the importance of bringing friends and family together to sip things, gently sip and eat good food together. It's just it's the most.
I can't tell you how happy I am that you said that, because I could not agree with you more. As a coincidence, last night on the podcast, I spent a half an hour interviewing or conversing with a psychologist whose expertise was essentially the impact of technology on human behavior. And one of the major themes of the conversation, Adrina, was how it's important with all the technology, with the bombardment, with the constancy of it, to actually separate yourself from it periodically, in live life, have a moment of kind of stillness or quiet or even boredom. These are all good things, but nothing more important than being able to sit down with people, whether it's over a nice mezcal, in this case Gem and Bolt, or a little something to eat and actually share time together and thoughts and that's so.
And dance when you can.
That's right.
Gotta dance.
Of course, you gotta dance.
Gotta dance.
I always have a playlist for dancing.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say this: it was a treat to hang out and spend time with you. I enjoyed very much what it is that you produced here. I can't wait to finish the giant glass that you poured me. And my friends, it's Gem and Bolt, and this is Adrina. And so it's easy to find Gem and Bolt online if you want to. And I want to thank you again for spending the time. I love talking to you, and I love what you're doing, and congratulations.
It was a joy to be here. Thank you.
My joy. Well, right. There you have it. That's what I'm talking about. Adrin Adrina. So cool. Great product. Lovely conversation. Sorry about the noise in the background. You know, it started quietly, but then it became happy hour, if you know what I'm saying. Mezcal. You may want to try some of that because the stuff is good. Tasty good. So's tequila. Hey, by the way, Cinco de Mayo is coming so soon. Next show, I suspect we'll spend some time talking a little bit more about things that are Mexican related to the Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May. But for today, my friends, this has been episode number 53 of All You Can Eat. And I'm Rob Rosenthal. I will be here with you next Wednesday and the Wednesdays thereafter at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I want to say thank you for tuning in. Thanks to the guys, Jimmy, the producer, up there in Boston, Massachusetts. Let's go, Boston.
Let's go, Boston.
There you go. Good to know you're up there listening in, my friend. This is good. Well, I'll tell you what, Jimmy, as long as you're there and I'm here, it looks like my time is coming to an end. I'm going to tell everybody I'll see you next week. And until then, remember that life is short, so never waste a meal.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man. I'm the Teflon Pan Man. Ain't nothing gonna stick on